Well, welcome to the Valley Hoops Insider Podcast, part of the Valley Hoops Insider website. I'm Harry Schroeder, editor of the site, and of course, the host of this show. And we're joined today by Cindy Stein. She's the head basketball coach at Southern Illinois University. The Salukis are in first place in the Missouri Valley Conference. And before we talk about your team this year and all of that, I talk to coaches all the time, and well, you were picked 8th in the preseason poll, and here you are in first place. Do you ever pay attention to polls?
I've said from day one, even when back in my Emporia State days, when we were picked number 1, I hate polls. Because honestly, I feel like, whoever gets picked first or second, there's a lot of great talk right there. Anybody else that gets picked below that, it's like you get that used against you in recruiting. I'm like, there's no good that ever happens with any of that. So I've never liked it, never have, but it is what it is, right? So it's just part of the culture, and you go with it.
Well, it's partly they have to give me something to talk about. So that's why they do it. I have to say something interesting. Appreciate you taking time on a game day like this. We were talking before we started that it's a difficult time for a lot of college basketball teams because of COVID makeup kinds of things. And you've got a tough game against the preseason favorite Bears and the Lady Bears, and then turn right around and drive over to their place and do it all over again. It's pretty demanding for the young ladies on your team and for the coaching staff, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And we've said this whole COVID time, I've just used that line, it is what it is, a million times, because as much as you try to fight it, we didn't want the game on Sunday, and we didn't want to definitely have to go there. We wanted to play 2 games here or do whatever's easiest for the student athletes. And no one cares about that. They say they do. Okay. Well, we're going to play a 5:00 game, back here late, on a school night. So, but again, what was my favorite line? It is what it is. So we're going to do whatever we need to do. We're going to show up and battle. But Missouri State's really tough. So, we've got to, figure out different ways to stop them.
Yeah, you're not playing Little Sisters of the Poor in this back-to-back game at all. Coach Mox has got a good one.
Oh, absolutely. Coach Mox has done a great job there, and man, they're playing well, and they're finding ways to win. They find different ways to win, and really to win this league, that's what you got to do, because the Valley is really tough.
400 wins earlier this season, and now you're preparing to retire. What was it like? I know for coaches, they're about the kids, they're about, the next thing, but all of a sudden we're kind of pausing and saying, wait, 400 wins. We ought to recognize this.
Well, I think the 400 wins are nice. And of course, Mackenzie, Sylvie, and Abby Brockmeyer remind me a lot that like over a quarter of them is from them. So that's always pretty funny to deal with. But, it's a great honor. But honestly, I didn't get in it for that kind of stuff. I'm very competitive. I love basketball. It's always been my favorite sport. The teams, the culture that you help develop, those are things that are very rewarding. Seeing your kids grow in different ways on and off the court. That's the stuff that really fills your heart. The retirement stuff is just the fact that, honestly, I just felt like God has another plan for me, and I don't know what that is. But I just had that feeling. And ever since I made that decision, I knew it was the right one.
Is there a big farewell tour going on? I remember when Norm Stewart was going through that, and he'd show up places and they'd have rocking chairs for him and that kind of thing. What's been the reaction around the league?
No, I get to see, some of my former assistants like Andrea Gorski at Bradley, Tanya Warren at Northern Iowa. So it's always good. We, usually just share a beverage together at some point. But no, there's no farewell tour, and I honestly don't want one. It's, because we want to have a good season, and we want to have a good season because of the kids on the team, not because of I'm the head of it.
Before I want to talk about your team and about the season going forward, but I think something like 3 or 4 out of the last 5 years, you guys have been in the top 25 nationally academically. There is a whole wide range of things you're trying to accomplish as a basketball coach, isn't there?
Absolutely. And it's taken us a little bit longer than obviously we wanted to at Southern. But when we took over, I think the GPA was like a 2.3, 2.4. Kids were missing class, not going. We had some kids in trouble with the law. There's a lot of off-court stuff. They hadn't won many games, maybe 3 or 4 games a year. I mean, so we just knew that, we had to get the right kids in, and we had to really change the culture. And part of that was getting really good students, and making sure that we were getting the kind of kids that would represent Southern Illinois extremely well. And we've done a great job of doing that. And now it's trying to get us back on that competitiveness too. I mean, you're trying to do all of that because you can't win without a really good foundation. And I feel like there's a really good, strong foundation here.
Before we got started, you and I were talking about that play behind you. What's that play called? Is there a name for it?
It's called double.
Okay. She says it's one of her favorite plays, and it's up on the wall. I love that. That's fun. Emporia State. Well, I want to take you further back. Outstanding career. Last couple of years there at Illinois, and for you, and then going into coaching, you're at Emporia State. I used to announce games back in the old MIAA before those teams in Kansas could even be in it. It was the Missouri Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Right. Talk about just that journey. Lots of different places: Division II, junior college, Missouri, and now Southern Illinois. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It has. And, I feel very blessed. I've had great staff. I've had great players. And so it's been a lot of fun. I mean, but right from the get-go, my first head coaching job at Emporia State, I hired a guy just getting done playing. His name was Brandon Schneider, and he's now coaching at Kansas. So, we have a million stories about, getting that program going, and, dragging a file cabinet out in the stairwell and spray painting it black, just to make our office look nicer. I mean, it's like we have all these crazy things that you do back then when you're just starting. And it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot from each other. And so those are kind of the things that you look back at. You just remember the people, everyone will ask, I don't remember scores of games. I don't remember a lot of that stuff. I remember the people.
And those people, like you talked about, your assistant coaches or people that played for you, or even people you played against, coached against, they become a whole big part of the fabric of like who you are and what your life looks like, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And even, Cindy Scott, who was such a great coach here at Southern. I was assistant coach at Bradley when Cindy Scott was here, and she's very superstitious. And we used to do everything we can to make them have to enter from a different doorway and mess up their practice time or something, 5 minutes or something, just because we knew how superstitious she was. And it never worked. But it's just, it was that kind of fun stuff that you just tried to do just to kind of gain any kind of edge.
People do not understand how outstanding the Missouri Valley Conference women's side of basketball is. My website is largely aimed at the men's side, and of course it gets more of the media attention, more of the ink, more of the website kinds of notions, but Missouri Valley Conference women's basketball is outstanding.
It really is. And it's because of people like Charlotte West and Cindy Scott, Cheryl Burnett, Jill Hutchinson, Lisa Bluter, Connie Yorey. It's just, you can just name all the fantastic coaches that really helped start the Valley, what used to be the Gateway Conference for women. And, I'm just very, appreciative of all their fight to get it done, because this is the best mid-major, conference in the country. And you can tell, there is not an easy game in this conference, especially this year.
You guys are leading the conference right now. 2 tough games this weekend, as we mentioned. But Mackenzie Sylvie, all-time leading scorer there. And she's leading the league in scoring right now. Abby Brockmeyer, one of your top 5 or 6 or 7 all-time rebounders there. You've got some quality players leading the way.
Well, we do. We've been just very fortunate. Both of those kids are from nearby. They're not, only a couple of hours from home, and their families can come, and they both come from tremendous families. But, even Gabby Walker, who is from the St. Charles area. Just a great group of kids that are playing really well together. But, Mackenzie and Abby get the most of the highlights of our team because they put up big numbers, both extremely competitive, very basketball minded. I call them hoop heads all the time, which you got to have hoop heads on your team. So they do a great job of doing that.
But And then how do you, they're both scoring. I think they're 1 and 2 in the league in scoring, and Gabby Walker's right up there as well. When you think about when you go into a game, and I know you scout the other team, but you also know your own team. How much of that I hear some coaches say, I don't care about the other team, we're going to be us. And then I hear other people go, no, we had to scout like crazy. Is there a balance in that for you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that, the first of the week, we always work on us in practice, what we want to tweak and things like that. And then I think as you get closer to game time that you're putting in stuff that, okay, how are we going to stop this kid? What's plan A, what's plan B, what's plan C, and looking at that and looking at statistics and, who's doing what, where, and how they scoring. And I think you look at all that stuff and try to come up with a really good game plan.
How have you seen the women's basketball, the game, but also the support? How have you seen it change over the years? You've been in it for a while, and I know it's changed. I mentioned I used to announce games at Central Missouri back in the old AIAW days,
Yeah.
And so I knew some of those pioneers, that were trying to get women's basketball on the map, and I wonder just how you've seen it transform or change over the years.
Well, I think that obviously the salaries are better. I mean, my first coaching job at a university was $13,000 a year, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
But I was coming from being a GA, so I think that anything was awesome after that. But I'll be honest, Harry, I think that there's pockets within the country that are doing extremely well on how they market, how they promote, attend women's basketball, and I think there's others that are just kind of hanging on, and we still have a lot more work to do. It's still not, the salaries are not the same. Priorities are not the same. Exposure, promotions, marketing, all that stuff, social media, all that time spent doing all of that stuff is not the same with men's and women's basketball. It is 10 times better, but it still needs to be a lot better. And there's still a lot of work to be done. And that's, people talk about Title IX, and I keep saying, they want to celebrate it. And yes, it's been fantastic, but we're not even close to where it needs to be. I mean, I think the Kim Mulkeys at LSU, the Dawn Staley's at South Carolina, right? I mean, they're getting what they deserve. But there's a lot of money being put into those programs to get them to where they were too. And a lot of hard work. And you just don't get that everywhere.
Yeah, I think Title IX was like the door opener, right? Like, and a lot of programs, they do kind of, I don't want to say the minimum, but they do enough to be compliant to Title IX, but they're not pressing into the spirit of it, maybe.
Well, absolutely. And there's loopholes in anything, right? So, there's always a way around it, but you can't tell me that's equal. I've coached a long time, and yeah, and I'm very fortunate. I always think coaches, professionally, I think everyone gets paid way too much money, but I don't want it all going to the owners either. So, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think that we've got to keep encouraging people. And the more women can start financially supporting women's things, I think helps. I talk to women all the time, and, they'll go to the men's game because their husband goes. I'm like, well, why don't you drag them to the women's game? Because it'd be just exciting, and I want them to go to the men's. I don't want anything taken away from the men's sports. But it's that whole mindset you got to change.
When I used to announce games for the SLU women's team, St. Louis University team here in St. Louis. And I remember when they were kind of trying to come out of, some difficult times, and they went to their first postseason play. They went to the women's NIT, first postseason time that they had ever been postseason in the history of the whole program. And there's times like that in programs that are very special, very unique. And it's that growing process for a program.
Absolutely. And I think that when people get surrounded by, good play and opportunity, I think they fall in love with it. And that's one of the things that happened in Emporia State. I mean, we played in White Auditorium, which I think can cover about maybe 2,500 people. And we had double headers. So they came early to get their seats for the men's game, but then they started watching us, and then they started arriving for our games, and so That's how you grow it, is through that exposure. And we've got to fight for more exposure.
And I know the Valley does a good job of getting the women's games on their ESPN Plus packages and all of those kinds of things. And I know Ryan at the office is constantly pumping out stuff and all of that. But there is a great need for exposure. And I wonder how the NIL stuff could even potentially be a benefit to women's sports in general, but women's basketball.
Yeah, I definitely think the NIL stuff, it helps you recruit if you can have that in your market. I think that those are, but I think the transfer portal is going to kill mid-majors unless we do something about it, which is a whole nother topic.
Well, yeah, and that to me was craziest, right? You want kids to have freedom. I have a son that was not an athlete and transferred 3 times in 4 years, because he was trying to find that right fit. And, I understand it from the student side too. But wow, I mean, how does Cindy Stein build a program, right? When you never know who's going to be there as soon as the season's over.
Well, for sure. And that's why the culture piece is so important, because part of that's loyalty, right? And accountability. And, those are things that sometimes doesn't get taught enough.
When you, I want to talk a little bit about your team. We talked about Abby and Mackenzie, and of course, Gabby from here in the St. Charles area, just northwest of where I'm at, and went to Lindenwood and then ended up with you guys. She's had a nice couple of years with you.
Yeah. And I love Gabby. She's one of the smartest kids on the team too. I mean, it's like, you don't want to have too many off the court discussions, because it's way over my head. Like, I have to have her, you got to dumb it down, because she does research in a lab, a lot of anatomy and science and chemistry. And I'm like, okay, so can you dumb this down for me and tell me exactly what you're doing? You're going to cure cancer. I get it, but
give me a clue.
Yeah, but she's a terrific young lady, and just love how she's developed. I mean, great hands, great footwork. Just been a great asset for us in every way.
You guys, like I said, you're picked 8th, and here you are in first place. And tell me a couple of the keys to the turnaround. I know you had a number of players coming back, and maybe people understood how good those players coming back were. But what's been the key for your team to succeed so far?
Well, for us, it's just, our kids have played really hard. I mean, it's just, we haven't always played well. I say the last couple of weeks, we haven't played well, but we play hard, and, we are very competitive. Our kids are extremely competitive. Our practices are very competitive. Heaven forbid that I leave out one round of something in a competition, because, if they don't get their even chance to even things up. I mean, I hear about it, but I love them like that. They're salty. And I think that helps us because I don't think we're always the most talented team in the league, but I think that we're going to be competitive and we're going to give it our best shot.
I talked to Coach Mox a couple of weeks ago and talked to her about her team. Of course, they've had an injury or two that have made things a little bit more difficult. But tell us about your matchup with them over the weekend. I'm going to get this out this afternoon, and people will get the scouting report.
There you go. Well, I think the thing that I'm so impressed with Missouri State is, yes, they've lost Tip and Franklin, but what those guys did, they always had really, really good depth. So even though they lost 2, heavyweights, they still have a very good, solid base of, probably 6, 7 kids. And I think they can go 8 pretty easily. I mean, because they've got shooters coming in off the bench, and, they're very good defensively. I mean, it's hard to score on them. You've got to find ways to score. You got to maybe do something a little bit different that's not scouted. I think those are the things, but they make adjustments quick because they've got some experienced kids out there. So I think that's what I've been most impressed with Missouri State, is just their toughness. They don't back down. They come after you. They play with a lot of pride. And all of them. And again, they got a really good inside game and they got a great outside game. And you try to take away one and then you get hit by the other one. So the most well-rounded defensive game plan you can have is you got to cover all 5 spots all the time.
Trying to finish the season, win the regular season, then you go to Quincy for the the end of the season tournament. Talk about Hoops in the Heartland. Talk about that event and how it's grown and what you like, or well, you don't have to say what you don't like. That would be negative.
Yeah.
You don't want to be negative, but what do you like about the Hoops in the Heartland tournament?
Yeah, it's in Moline.
Moline, not
And,
Quincy. You're right. I said that wrong.
and it's a great venue. Terrific fan support. I mean, the local community supports us extremely well. And again, it just gives you a really nice arena. I mean, I know they promote it. The hotels are really close, so there's not it's not like easy travel back and forth. You're walking to the games. Your kids can go watch the other teams play. It's a really good tournament format. Just have really enjoyed, the sponsorships have been good. The people running the event, I mean, your kids are so welcomed when they get there. And so it has this really cool hometown feel to it. But it's an extremely competitive scenario, and you got to be ready to play as soon as you step on that floor.
So you said the Lord has plans for you after all of this. So can you tell us a little bit about what you think is next?
Well, my first priority will be my mother. My mom's 88, lives in Peoria, Illinois, and I'll spend some time with her and help with her. And I do have a place in Florida that I will eventually get to. I'll probably travel a little bit, got some family I want to see, but I say anything that I know right off that has to do with the beach, golf, or pickleball. Those are the three things that, I know will be part of my life.
Don't you think Jack Watkins ought to be hiring you to travel around and do some of this media stuff? You could be an analyst on the basketball games.
Well, I used to do that, so I absolutely love it, and I hope I will have an opportunity to do that. It'd be great to do it with the Valley, but I had a ton of fun doing it when I did it, and I covered Northern Iowa, Wichita State at the time, so it'd be fun.
Well, listen, I've just enjoyed getting to know you a little bit. We love the women's side of things around here as well, and just wanted to thank you for your years, both in SIU but across the board. Like I said, I go way back, so I appreciate the people that have been in it a long time.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's been a lot of fun. And like I said, the people have been fantastic, and I can't say enough about how blessed I've been with being surrounded with great people in conference offices, to SIDs, to media, to my staff and players. It's been a great time, and I'm going to try to go out strong.
That's Cindy Stein. She's the head basketball coach at SIU. Big weekend games against Missouri State. I'm Harry Schroeder. Thanks for watching. Remember, since you've been there, make it a better place. We'll see you again real soon.